It is a Tuesday afternoon in February, and you are standing in the laundry aisle. You came in for bread and butter. You did not plan on this, but the jug at home ran out this morning, and now you are under the fluorescent lights with a plastic jug in each hand, $20 in one, $26 in the other, trying to decide which one is the better deal. You look at the label. The ingredient list is long: surfactants, enzymes, optical brighteners, fragrance. You put the $20 one in the cart. You have been doing it this way your whole adult life, and so has your mother, and the thought does not occur to you, because why would it, that the thing sitting in that bottle has no business being in a bottle at all. Now I want you to sit with something. For most of human history, nobody paid for soap, not one penny. The soap existed because the household existed, and everything you needed to make it was already there at the end of every week: the ash in the hearth, the fat from the cooking, the rainwater off the roof. The people who lived before us were not making a choice about it. They were just not throwing away what was already useful. At some point, somebody put those same three things into a factory, put the result in a bottle, put a price on it, and taught the next generation to buy what their grandparents made. The knowledge did not disappear. It just stopped being mentioned. My name is John Fisher. I am Amish, and I farm in Holmes County, Ohio. My grandmother Ruth made her laundry soap from ash and fat and rainwater for 50 years, and she never bought a jug of anything. I watched her do it in her kitchen when I was a boy. I do it the same way now. Hannah washes the clothes of our whole family with it, the field clothes and the good Sunday clothes and the children's everything, and what we spend on laundry soap in a year is nothing. Nothing. Today I am going to show you exactly how to make it, the mechanism of why it works better than most people expect, and the one thing most people do wrong that turns the whole batch to liquid. Stay for that part especially, because it is not obvious, and it is the reason most folks who try this once give up and go back to the store. Let me start with what the recipe actually is, because when I say $0, I want you to understand I mean it in the plainest possible way. You need wood ash. You need animal fat, the kind that comes off your cooking. You need water. That is the whole list. If you have a fireplace or a wood stove, you already have the ash. If you cook with any kind of meat or fat at all, you already have the fat. And rain falls on most houses for free. The only thing this recipe costs is a little patience and a clean bucket. Here is the chemistry, because once you understand it, the recipe becomes obvious. Wood ash is not just gray powder. Inside that ash is a mineral called potassium carbonate, and when you pour water through it, the water pulls that mineral out and becomes what the old people called lye water, a strongly alkaline solution. And fat, when you mix it with a strongly alkaline solution and heat it, goes through a change the chemists call saponification. The fat molecules split apart. The fatty acid chains grab onto the alkali and rearrange themselves into a new molecule entirely. That new molecule is soap. Not soap-like, not soap-flavored. Actual soap. The same basic chemistry that sits in every bar on the store shelf, made from nothing but what the fire left behind and what the skillet dripped. This has been understood for thousands of years. The Romans knew it. The settlers knew it. Every farm household in Holmes County before 1950 knew it. The only thing that changed is that someone else started doing it and charging you for the result. The ash you want comes from hardwood: oak, maple, hickory, cherry, apple. Any of those. Hardwood ash is rich in potassium carbonate and makes a strong lye water that does the job right. What you must not use, and this is important, is ash from treated lumber, painted wood, plywood, or any wood that was ever coated, stained, or pressure treated. Those woods burn off compounds that belong nowhere near your family's clothes or your skin. Clean wood from a wood pile or a tree you cut yourself, that is all you want. Soft wood like pine will work in a pinch, but the ash from it has less potassium carbonate and makes a weaker lye. You will end up with soap that does not set quite right. Go for hardwood whenever you have a choice. Now, here is the thing most people do wrong, and my grandmother Ruth was particular about this. The test. Before you mix your lye water with your fat, you have to test the lye water's strength, not with any instrument, with a potato or an egg. Drop a small chunk of raw potato or a fresh egg into your lye water. If it floats, the lye is strong enough. If it sinks to the bottom, you need to run more water through more ash to strengthen it. The old people called it the egg test, and they used it for generations before chemistry had words for any of this. If you skip the egg test and your lye is weak, the fat and the lye will not combine properly, and you will end up with a bucket of greasy water that smells like soap but does not clean anything. That is the number one reason people say this does not work. They skip the test. Do not skip the test. My grandmother had a wooden ash hopper behind her summer kitchen, a simple slanted box, open at the top, with small holes drilled through the bottom board. She packed it with fresh ash and poured clean rainwater in at the top and collected the lye water in a clay crock underneath. She would run water through twice if the first pass did not pass the egg test. My father Jacob built her a new one when the old wood got soft, and she kept that one until she could no longer use the summer kitchen herself. When I was maybe 9 years old, she set me down at the kitchen table and put an egg in a cup of plain water and an egg in a cup of lye water and told me to look. The one in plain water lay on the bottom of the cup like a stone. The one in the lye water bobbed right at the surface. She said that is the difference between a bucket of soap and a bucket of nothing. Remember it. I have never forgotten it. Once your lye water passes the egg test, the fat is next. The fat you want is whatever cooking fat your household produces, rendered clean, the drippings off roasted pork, the lard from a butchering, beef tallow skimmed off the pot after a long braise. Whatever you have, you want it clean and melted, and if you have been saving cooking drippings through the winter the way we do, you will have more than enough. What you are trying to avoid is fat with too much water or impurities in it. If you render your fat slowly in a pan and skim off the foam that rises, then let it cool and pour off the solid fat from anything that settled at the bottom, that is your soap fat, good and clean. In a cast iron pot over gentle heat, you combine the melted fat and the lye water slowly. The old recipe for soft soap runs roughly 1 part lye water to 2 parts fat by volume, but the exact amount depends on the strength of your lye, which is why the egg test matters so much. You pour the lye into the fat, not the fat into the lye, and you stir, continuously, slowly, with a wooden spoon, not metal, because the lye will react with certain metals in ways you do not want. You stir for a long time. The mixture will look cloudy at first, then it will begin to thicken, moving from a thin liquid to something more like a loose pudding. The chemists call this stage trace. The old people called it when it pulls. When you drag the spoon across the surface and it leaves a mark that holds for a moment before filling back in, you are there. Take it off the heat. Pour it into a clean container. Let it cool. What you have is soft soap, a thick amber gel that smells of wood smoke and fat and nothing else, and that will clean the clothes of your whole household for months. You use it differently than the store stuff. A tablespoon per load in a standard machine. 2 tablespoons if the load is heavy or filthy. It will not foam up the way the store soap does. Foam is not cleaning. Foam is air. The store soaps add foaming agents because your nose and your eyes have been taught to read foam as evidence of work being done. Soft soap does not foam and it still cleans because the job of soap is not to foam. The job of soap is to break the surface tension of water and help it carry the grease and the dirt away from the cloth. This soap does that as well as anything I have ever seen. Field clothes, barn clothes, the knees of a child's pants that came home covered in mud and worse. They come out clean. What it does not do, and I will not tell you otherwise, is handle the heavy enzyme work on certain protein stains. Blood, grass stains deep in fabric, some of the very stubborn food stains. Those need a pre-treat. A dab of dish soap rubbed directly on the stain before the wash, left to sit for 10 minutes, handles most of it. The soft soap in the machine does the rest. Do not skip the pre-treat on a bad stain and then blame the soap. I want to say something about the detergent companies that I think deserves saying calmly and only once. They did not hide this from you out of malice. No man schemed in a back room about the wood ash in your hearth. What happened was simpler. It simply pays better to sell you something in a bottle with a picture of a mountain lake on it than to tell you that the fire you already have is making the same ingredient for free. A family of 4 spends close to $400 on laundry products in a year. That is a real income for somebody. The people whose job it is to sell you that product are very good at their job. The label is designed to make you feel like you could not possibly do without it. None of those pictures show an ash hopper and a clean clay crock underneath. They would not sell many bottles if they did. I am not angry about it. I am just telling you what it is. The deeper thing worth saying is this. The knowledge your grandmother carried about this house and this land and this household was not primitive. It was not the knowledge of people who did not have anything better. It was the knowledge of people who understood the mechanism of the world they lived in so well that they could make what they needed from what was already there. That is not poverty. That is mastery. The store has convinced most of this country that mastery means buying the right product, the right brand, the right enzyme, the right scent, the right bottle. But mastery is knowing that the ash and the fat and the rain were always going to be enough. It was always going to be enough. You just had to know what to do with them. A household that knows how to make its own soap is less dependent on the truck that keeps the store stocked, on the price that changes without warning, on the factory that makes the bottle. What belongs to you is what you can make yourself when the store is closed. So here is what I want you to do. This week, start saving your cooking fat. Every time you drain a pan of bacon or skim a pot of broth, pour the fat into a clean jar and put a lid on it. You will have enough for a first batch within a few weeks just from ordinary cooking. While you are building that up, collect your hardwood ash and keep it dry in a covered bucket. Rain falls on a covered bucket without doing anything useful. Keep it dry until you are ready. And when you have enough of both, mix your lye water, pass the egg test, combine it with the fat over gentle heat and stir until it traces. The first time you see it pull, you will understand exactly what your grandmother knew and why she never stood in a laundry aisle reading an ingredient list under fluorescent lights. Tell me in the comments what county and state you are in and whether your family ever made their own soap growing up. I want to know if this knowledge is still alive where you come from or if it was lost a generation back. I read everyone. Next time I am going to show you what we do with that same ash water in the garden in spring, what it does for the soil around certain plants, and what it will flat out kill if you put it in the wrong place. The same ingredient, 2 very different uses, and the second one saves a trip to the garden center. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Until then, save your fat, keep your ash dry, and remember that the knowledge your grandmother carried in her hands was not small. It kept families fed and houses clean and bills paid for generations. It still will, if you let it.